My name is Miss Courtney van der Zalm. I was adopted from Ethiopia in 1995, and the reason I want to do this story is because I don't actually disagree with Ethiopia banning the whole adoption, but I really think that there are some sides of this story that need to be heard. And my side of the story is I think my adoptive parents really didn't adopt for love, they adopted to look influential. They had a lot of money and they loved to flaunt me and my adoptive sister around, who, when I went into foster care, I later realised that she wasn't even related to me. There was literally nothing that we have in common, bar the fact that I think my grandma and her grandma were related. Besides that, my family didn't even want me to go into adoption. They'd been writing to me and wanting me to come back home. I think, like I said, I think both sides lie. My adoptive parents were hiding all the letters I was writing to my family, were saying that they were sending it but never sent them. And the adoption agency that I went through basically had all the information sitting there for me for when I was ready to pick it up, but had basically said that my adoptive parents didn't want me to have it because they felt like I wanted to go home and they wanted me to fit into their family. When I first came to Australia, it was kind of weird for me because they'd already had kids. So me and my cousin, apparently, we were 6 and 7, and they'd already adopted a young girl from Korea, and they got her when she was like a baby. So they got the chance to bond with her and everything. When they adopted me, my sister, or my cousin, as it was written on my adoption paperwork, I think they were lied to. We weren't the age that the adoption agency said we were. We were a lot older. Within 2 years of coming into Australia and eating probably better food and different diet, I developed into a woman pretty quickly, within 2 years. So by the time I was 8, I was, developing. And by the time I was 9, I'd pretty much hit puberty. My adoptive mother basically said, no, you haven't hit puberty. That she basically told me that it wasn't my period and that I need to basically stop lying, is what I was told. I was lying and that I was stealing things. And yeah, I was stealing pads and tampons because I was bleeding and there was nothing I could do. I can't change my age. I can't go back. And then the worst part for me is coming into a family and thinking that they want you for who you are, and realizing that my adoptive mother wouldn't let me grow my hair, wouldn't allow me to braid it. She said that I had nits, so they shaved my hair and never let me grow my hair. So when I was a little girl, I would get my hair shaved pretty much really, really short, almost to zero. So I just had this little afro on the top of my head, and that is pretty much how they let it grow. They would never let me grow it to a certain length because they said your hair smelled, you don't know how to look after it. This was always an excuse that my adoptive mother had. Not just that, we were never allowed to have friends. We were never allowed to join more than what they wanted us to in the Ethiopian community. I'm in a position in my life now where I have beautiful boys, and I know what I experienced in my life was abuse, was mental abuse. So if I didn't do my homework right or I wasn't speaking proper English, they would withhold things from me, food, treats, things that I wanted. So I don't know, but I feel like adoption is something that needs to be worked on from both sides. I think that the government in all these countries needs to step up and maybe have more social workers. If you're taking the money from these people, and it's a lot of money that you're getting, I don't think there's enough support that's been put on both sides. Like I said, my family thought I was coming, my biological family thought I was coming here to study. My grandma used to write to me until she died, which I feel really bad because I didn't even get to read any of those letters until I was like 18. So to me, my heart breaks. I had nothing that was me in this country. When I came to Australia, they literally stripped me and made me what they wanted me to be. I wasn't allowed anything. The only other contact I had was this fake cousin who was quite happy to transform into what they wanted her to be. I didn't want that. I wanted to go home. And stories that I remember my adoptive mother telling me is, for about 2 years, I used to sit in a chair and rock myself back and forth and cry and scream in Amharic and say I wanted to go home. Yet she didn't do anything like get counselling or try and bond with me, but just literally hate me. I know for a fact what I felt was hate. I hated her and she hated me, and we just couldn't get along. So the best thing for me to do was, at the age of 13, is I rang foster care. She worked for foster care. I rang foster care and said my name and said that I felt like I was being mentally abused and that I wanted to get out. And that was where my life changed for me, for the better. I met a really amazing mother in foster care who allowed me to be who I am, brought out the African in me, took me to a hairdresser's where I got my hair braided. I felt like I was getting me back. I was able to join a community where it's for adoptive children, so I got to meet other adoptive Ethiopian girls that, had the afro and were allowed to be who they were supposed to be. So what I felt in my adoptive family was true. And still to this day, my adoptive mother talks to me on Facebook and acts like nothing happened, that they didn't allow people to abuse us, like family members that probably shouldn't have been allowed to spend time with us were spending time with us. I could barely speak English for about 2 years. Understanding and interpreting English was really hard for me. I wasn't very good at my literacy, so I used to spend hours and hours having to do my homework over and over again till I got it correct, because these are the things that they found were very important to them, which I think is absolutely beautiful. I think it's beautiful to say you need to have a good education, but to realise that you've got a child who isn't understanding it and basically making her cry and feel like, if I don't get this right, I'm going to spend the whole day being yelled at, basically being tortured mentally to get what I can't understand. I was told by one of my teachers that I had dyslexia, and my adoptive mother literally looked at her and said, that's just an excuse. She just needs to learn to read better. She needs to do it more until she gets it better. They never accepted that maybe I was a bit dumb and that I needed a little bit more help in some areas. But like I said, thankfully for the fact that, I was a bit sneaky, I used to read some of her case notes. So I realised what was going on in my house was mental abuse. So with that, I was able to, ring foster care, talk to people. So I went to a private school, so I used to have a lot of information from adults that I was able to take bits of information and put it together and realise that what I was going through wasn't normal and that I needed to get out. And when I did get out, I found an exceptional life outside that torment. I found people that accept you for who you are, that want you to be happy, that literally love children, that didn't do it for money, got something completely different than what they were bargaining for, and totally freaked out, because that's what I feel like happened in my relationship. I feel like as soon as I started hitting puberty, it really freaked her out. She didn't expect to have, like she used to always say, you're older than what you are. She wasn't expecting her 4-year-old 2 years later to be getting, her period and everything else that sort of ensued. But that's what happened. They were lied to. I was 3 years older than what they were told I was, so I wasn't 4. It was either 10 or 11. We still can't get my age and then my date of birth, because the adoption agency purposely loses your information because they don't want to be done for lying. So, yeah, my adoptive dad used to always, when I used to say, how old am I really? He would always say that they rolled a dice to decide my age, which isn't very funny to me, but he always found that quite humorous. As well as, like, just any time you'd ask about what my parents were like or what my life was like, they would always say that, you know, my parents didn't want me, that they didn't love me, that they couldn't afford to have me, but that wasn't true. For some of us, the truth is that our family think we're going to a different country with the help of foreigners to be educated, and that is what my grandma thought till the day she died. And that breaks my heart, because I'm never going back to Ethiopia, because, yeah, I do feel like I was abandoned by my country. And I love the country that I'm in, but yeah, I don't feel like I'm someone that got closure from the end of my adoption. I feel like I was left in limbo by the government of South Australia, and I'm obviously I'm in Australia, so it's not just an American problem, and it's interstate problem. It's happened in London. It's happened everywhere where there's adoptive children, where parents think that they're going to get a certain product. To me, it is like buying something from the shop. I think they thought they were going to get a certain thing. They didn't get what they wanted, and yeah, I think they felt like they were robbed of a lot of money. And whether I liked it or not, I needed to suck it up and be a part of their family. And I didn't like it. And I wasn't going to sit there and say this is how I was brought up, because that isn't how my grandma raised me. She raised me to be a strong African woman, and that's what I did. I said enough was enough, and I went out. And I don't look back. I don't regret anything. But I do regret not having a voice earlier. I do regret not saying that my adoption was mentally cruel, because anything I did wrong, they always told me I was going to go back home. So I think for me, adoption needs to be fixed on both ends. There needs to be a lot more support in this country, or whatever country, in America, in Australia, in Britain. There needs to be a lot more support for the mums and the adoptive parents there. And I think in Africa, I think Australia and all the countries that are allowing their citizens to adopt, they need to have more of an input, and they need to have someone on the ground in there making sure that these agencies aren't ripping them off. They're not stealing kids that look more healthier, that are going to sell, because that's what I was told. It's because I looked healthy that I was chosen. And it's kind of sad that that's what they do, but what they did is they chose me. They took me from my house, and they told my family that I was going to go be educated. That was something that they wanted for me. So it's sad, but it's the way of the world.